It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Locked On Lakers podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin. I'm joined by Pete Zayas and Adam Mares. Adam, really quick, Pete and I just have to celebrate the Celtics losing just for a little bit, just to take a step back.
It's been a hell of a week, my man. It's been,
is there not
Schadenfreude is just
that wants a Lakers-Celtics matchup? There's no party that wants that?
Adam, if I want them to lose at Tiddlywinks, I want them to miss the bus on the way to the arena. Yeah. It's very deep. Yes, I would love to smash the Celtics. I would also like to see them get swept at any point.
Yeah,
that's always my first joy.
Having seen that they're pretty clearly the lesser team between them and Miami, I would prefer that they come back and win the series.
Hey, man, here's the thing about the bubble, and I really believe this, and this is why we've seen, look, Denver has now come back from 2-3-1 series. I don't think that happens if you have to go on the road ever. Part of this is adjustments have been so important. Momentum has been so important. Teams figuring each other out have been so important because there's nothing else. It's the same venue. It's quiet. If you have an adjustment, then you have an edge. Whereas usually, even if you make an adjustment, now you got to go on the road into the other arena. And are your young players, are they going to make their shots and all those other variables? So I think you can – I know you guys want to bury the Celtics already. I think they clearly look inferior to the Heat right now, but you never know when that one thing – maybe it's solving the zone.
If they ever figure out a way to score against a zone.
I'm not burying them, but I'm certainly enjoying them being down. Yeah. They got to win 4 out of 5, and that's going to be a tough road to hoe against that Miami team.
Totally. So this is an interesting evening for Adam and I. Adam and me, I guess, is what I would say there. But we are going to record this show that previews Lakers Nuggets from the Lakers standpoint. Then we have Locked On NBA, in which we will be previewing Lakers Nuggets in some fashion. Yeah. And then after that, I'm gonna hop on Locked On Nuggets, so to preview it more from the Nuggets standpoint. So make sure you guys tune in for all 3 of those shows. I guarantee you, Adam and I are gonna be really sick of each other by the end of the evening, but we get to at least start out fresh on on this one. Adam, this is where I want to start because, like, you and I, we talk throughout the year. We record a show weekly, and the thing that I told you today is that, like, I would typically have confidence going up against the Nuggets. The Lakers were legitimately bored against them at times during the season, but this is a very different team. And I'm interested, just from where you're sitting, having paid such close attention to the Nuggets. What is so different? How did this turn on a dime kind of situation come about?
Well, I think there's a little bit of selective memory for you because I remember the Nuggets-Lakers games being pretty good. I mean, clearly the Lakers better, but I don't remember them being bored of them. I mean, it's funny, as I went back to scout the regular season games, one of the things I sadly had to do is throw them out. The bubble game, Bol makes a first quarter appearance. So okay, all right, that's probably not telling us anything. Even in the February game, which I was hoping would be the best indicator of it. Also, I think Noah Vonleh played some minutes in that game. It just was another game where it's like, okay, this is probably not very indicative. But
wait, Noah Vonleh's on the Nuggets?
Did you even know that? Isn't that crazy?
Crap.
Troy Daniels too. He might decide this.
We knew that one. Just by Laker affiliate.
Totally.
Right.
Yes. I absolutely knew that one.
No, so I don't. Here's the thing. The Nuggets were always better, in my opinion, than what people thought. The Clippers probably were a little bit worse than people thought, and certainly more fragmented than people realized, I think. And so that series, to me, in hindsight, is maybe a little bit less surprising. The Nuggets are underdogs in this one, and I think they're the same underdogs that we thought they were probably 6 months ago. It's just now people have kind of seen Denver on the big stage, and it's like, oh, yeah, that team is dangerous. They're not favorites, but they're dangerous. They're capable of beating you if you have vulnerabilities.
Yeah, the Lakers need to have an appropriate fear of the Nuggets. If they don't, like, that's a team that's not going to give up. The Lakers have a habit of getting 12 to 15-point leads and then completely letting their foot off of the gas. Mm-hmm. And Denver's the type of team where, I mean, we've seen they're not going to give up. And when they get on a roll, you know, and you get Jokic and them 4-on-3s, and he's just he was picking the Clippers apart. That's actually one thing I wanted to ask you about, Adam, is the Lakers' defensive game plan in the first two series. They've faced two elite guards. Jamal Murray has staked his claim as one of the elite guards in the NBA in these playoffs, most certainly. The Lakers featured a lot of trapping against Harden and a lot of shocking the ball and hard hedges, basically having their big man come out in the ball screen game against the Portland Trailblazers. Now, that's something where, you get Jokic on the short roll in those 4-on-3s. He's going to kill you. Millsap's a great passer as well. From your experience, from watching the team, what's the pick and roll coverage that you think that you guys struggle with the most?
It definitely wouldn't be trapping. I think that aggressive scheme is pretty feast or famine, and sometimes it'll feast and you'll get out in transition a lot. Jamal Murray, we talk about where has he grown as a player. One is his three-point attempt rate. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later on. He's really making his threes inside this bubble. He's taking a lot more. But the other is just understanding how to read the court. And this is the journey of every young point guard, right? It takes several years for you to kind of figure out all the rhythms and angles and everything else in the pick and roll. And it seems like, especially inside this bubble and in this playoffs, he's done a very good job of reading that. And to your point, Pete, if you give Jokic a 4-on-3, I don't know who's better than at that skill in the NBA outside of maybe Luka, maybe LeBron, and those guys don't do it too often.
Right, yeah. Draymond's kind of the guy that's the short roll passer, right? He's great at that, but Jokic's size and he's just got better field. Like, yeah, he's one of the best ever.
Draymond's the best passer, maybe as good as anybody passing out of that, but is he as good of a scorer as
no, certainly
Luka,
not.
a LeBron or a Jokic? No chance. So,
right.
But either way, he's in that conversation too. So if you trap like that, it's going to be feast or famine, because if you don't do it correctly, if you don't get the steal to stop or disrupt the offense, then Denver is in their most comfortable position. For me, I think, Jamal Murray has really hit his pull-up threes. I think if you have the personnel, and what I suspect the Lakers are going to do is maybe try to play bigger players out on him and be comfortable with the switch, maybe even try to backside switch or pre-switch or this or that and trying to disrupt it. I think there'll be a little bit of that. But as is the case with Jokic across the board, I don't think you can do any one thing. I think you have to have multiple plans, and you have to kind of mix things up and keep them guessing.
Yeah, I think that's generally with every great player, but especially Jokic. Like, the thing that I always kind of marvel with Jokic is he doesn't get bored in beating somebody. Like, he just, if there's a way that he sees that he can find an advantage, he's going to keep picking at that advantage. He's going to keep going to it. He's not quite like Anthony Davis, who will have 4 or 5 baskets, go into the, buckets, go into the basket, getting fouled and stuff like that, and then take a pull-up, fadeaway jumper because he can. Jokic is if he finds an advantage, he's going to keep picking at that scab until it really becomes a problem. I'm also interested from the Nuggets defensive standpoint. I feel like it's too easy to say, all right, the Lakers are just going to run a ton of LeBron and AD pick and roll and try to get Jokic out there in trouble in that aspect of it. But the same kind of thing is offense, though. You can't rely on one thing. You can rely on it in big moments. But do you think over the course of a series that there's something the Nuggets can do to adjust to that play and keep Jokic out of it?
Well, the Utah Jazz very nearly ran the same play for 7 games in one. So it is possible to beat a team off of one action. And that spread pick and roll is, of course, I tell people this all the time. Nobody really wants to believe it. I think the Nuggets and Jokic specifically are great on defense. They just suck at this one thing. Yeah. And in the playoffs, if you can take advantage of that one thing, then they look horrible. Yeah. Absolutely. If you ask me the thing that gives me the most fear as a Nuggets fan, one is foul trouble. Anthony Davis, LeBron draw a lot of fouls, and Jokic, Denver's best player, probably going to be involved in a lot of the actions that draw fouls. So if Jokic is off the court, this is a laugher. So foul trouble, but that spread pick and roll is a big one. The thing I think working against the Lakers is that the guys that they're going to place around in their death lineups, their lineups where you say, okay, now it's time to really score and put some pressure on them, those guys aren't going to be able to defend well. If you try to spread the court with Kuzma, I don't know who your best lineup is to put around them. If you said we're just going to play spread pick and roll, I think Denver might be able to try to score with you, and now you're just counting on those guys to make shots, because Denver's strategy in that scenario is going to be, well, we can't give AD shots, we can't give LeBron shots, we got to hope Danny Green goes cold.
Yeah. I feel like this is actually something I wanted to talk about on the other side of the break is I feel like for both teams, that's what it is, right? The bad Danny Green game, the bad Torrey Craig game. Those are the things that both teams are just desperately hoping to avoid. So let's take a quick second and come back and we'll talk about that aspect of it.
Today's program is brought to you by Athletic Greens, the all-in-one daily drink to support better health and peak performance. Even with a balanced diet, it's difficult to cover all of your nutritional bases. That's where Athletic Greens will help. Their daily drink is like a nutritional insurance for your body that's delivered straight to your door. Developed from a complex blend of 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients, Athletic Greens is a greens powder engineered to help fill the nutritional gaps in your diet. Their daily drink improves your everyday performance by addressing the 4 pillars of health: energy, recovery, gut health, and immune support. I love it because I try to eat healthy, but I can't keep track of how many vitamins are in my daily diet. My dad is super health conscious. He measures and tracks everything he eats, and he takes 5 or 6 different vitamins a day. He tried to get me to do the same, but I can get everything I need from one scoop of Athletic Greens. Plus, I'm not a coffee drinker, but I felt clear-headed in the morning after drinking a super easy 12-ounce glass of water with Athletic Greens mixed in. And when you try Athletic Greens through the Locked On Network, they'll also give you a year's supply of vitamin D3 K2 for free. So whether you're looking to boost your energy levels, support your immune system, or address gut health, now's the perfect time to try Athletic Greens for yourself. Simply visit athleticgreens.com/NBA to claim my special offer today and receive the free D3 K2 Wellness Bundle with your first purchase. That's up to 1 year supply of vitamin D as added value when you try their delicious and comprehensive daily all-in-one drink. You'd be hard-pressed to find a more comprehensive nutritional bundle anywhere else. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NBA.
You were going to make a point in response to Adam there?
Oh, just the death lineups with the Lakers defend their asses off. They cover a ton of distance. That's now the thing that with Denver that's different from the first 2 rounds is there's nobody that you can pull attention from, right? Like Lakers rotations after their traps, against Houston were wonderful. But if there's a question of do I close out to PJ Tucker in the corner or Russell Westbrook on the wing, it's an easy decision to make, right? Like, so you've got, and there's nobody really on the Nuggets that in most of their lineups that you can do that with, right? So, but the thing about the Lakers is, and I think that this is with those small ball lineups, I'm a big advocate of those small ball lineups against Denver because unlike Gobert, right, is that AD can pick and pop as well, right? And so that's something that with those small lineups where Morris is in and Kuzma's in, they're still relatively big, right? You've got, kind of these 2, 3, 4 type guys. Yeah. And they can cover a lot of space. My question regarding you guys is, so if I'm putting a game plan together from a Lakers perspective, I want to exhaust Jokic. Yeah. I want to, especially after everything that you guys have been through, I'm looking that the Lakers, as wonderful as your front court is, it's not the most athletic. And I think that was one thing from going back and watching the tape, like Dwight really hurts Jokic on the offensive boards. And he's just really strong. AD's really fast, right? LeBron, there's a lot of athletic. The Lakers are bigger, faster, stronger.
Athletic size.
Athletic size. How have you guys handled that, right? Throughout the season, handled like athletic size.
So I keep hearing everybody say that, the Lakers need to go small. That's the way that they're going to beat them. And I think you're actually keying in on what to me is the best point. Those small lineups are going to be great sort of at blitzing Denver and blitzing Jokic, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. And it's just that, okay, now he has to change up and really, but I think the lineups you're going to win the series with are going to be including Dwight, maybe JaVale a little bit as well, but Dwight in particular, for the reason you just said. Yeah. Bigs that bang and have strength are exhausting. It's so much more exhausting than covering an open space. And I'm saying this as a big. If I had to go out and if I had to go out and guard the perimeter, like, okay, I know I'm gonna have to use some energy, but I'm not. If I'm boxing out a guy that starts boxing out the moment a guy goes in the shoot,
it's just constant.
It's just constant, and I think that's what Dwight represents. And then secondly, Anthony Davis, I think, could guard Jokic pretty well. Probably not as well as Gobert, and Jokic did very well against Gobert, but he can guard him pretty well because he's one-on-one in the post. But if you guard him with Dwight, and now you have a guy that physically can kind of keep him from just backing you down, and you have Anthony Davis kind of peering over as a secondary rim protector, like, oh, if you beat him, I'm here as well. Mm-hmm. And maybe, Denver likes to play Millsap. So, okay, Millsap's on the court. We're going to run out at him. We're not going to give him open shots, but Anthony Davis is going to be patrolling. That's how you beat Jokic, in my opinion. That's the number one thing is Denver then has to decide, do we put Michael Porter on the court? Do we go small and put shooters on the court so that Anthony Davis can't do that? Well, now Anthony Davis and Dwight Howard are grabbing every offensive rebound, and they're scoring in other ways on the other end of the court. Or do we stay big so we can match their size, but now we got to pray that Jeremy Grant and Paul Millsap shoot their best from three? I think – so to me, that's what it would be, is a lot of minutes with two bigs, Anthony Davis not on Jokic, and then you blitz him in small doses with that small ball lineup, and you get some 8-2 runs out of those.
I think that's the general direction they're going to go. Frank Vogel was asked about it, and he says that they're going to return to form was his verbiage there, and he was saying that they're going to go back to going big. Now, whether that is going big with JaVale or going big with Dwight, I think the Houston series wasn't really the series for either of them, but it was especially a bad matchup for Dwight, and we hardly saw him. I think this is the one where we should hardly see JaVale, because
I agree with that. Yeah,
he's just. The thing about JaVale is he's long, he's athletic, he can give you issues on the offensive boards and in general. But the kind of bigs that the Denver has, they're thick, they're impossible to move, and thus JaVale becomes easy to move, and there you lose that advantage. So I think there with Dwight, his physicality is going to be more important than anything JaVale has on him athletically. I'm interested. We talked about some of the approach to Jokic, but I have no idea what anybody on that team does with LeBron. And it's at that point. I mean, nobody really does anything with LeBron.
When you say this team, are you talking about every team that's ever played basketball? Or are you talking
in the
about
history
the specific Denver Nuggets team?
Some football teams have no idea what to do with LeBron. Like because on one hand you say, all right, run that pick and roll with LeBron and AD, and you try to hurt Jokic in that regard. But even with that said, I don't even know if you necessarily need to match up Hunt that much, because it's not like Michael Porter Jr. Jeremy Grant is at least decently equipped to handle LeBron physically, but there just isn't very much there. And if Grant gets into foul trouble and Millsap gets into foul trouble, then Denver becomes a completely different team. So I guess
you got to dust off Noah Vonleh, who I'm told once stopped LeBron one time. I don't know what it was. I can't even remember what team it was on or for. And so there was a brief moment in time where Noah Vonleh. What's funny is Noah Vonleh, absolute unit, enormous,
huge,
equally sized as LeBron.
Yeah,
but equally as sized as, like, you look at this guy and you're like, man, this guy's a beast. Look how he's the same size as LeBron James. Like, oh my god.
Yeah, I always marvel at that with Paul Millsap. Because Millsap is really broad shoulders, really thick legs and stuff like that. And then you see him next to LeBron and like, oh my God.
He's kind of smaller than him. Yeah, it's like, oh, wow. Hell? That's our power forward, like our big power forward.
Pete, do you think before you answer, but Pete, do you think there is something where the Lakers kind of even simplify it further and just go straight LeBron in the post kind of situation?
Yeah, they against Denver, they would clear out one side, and they've been doing this in the bubble as well, kind of old school 90s basketball of, one on one side and four on the other. And the Lakers have been doing that with both LeBron and AD. And I think that's more of a perimeter matchup. Denver would strong side zone that a little bit. And so they were vulnerable to skip passes. And that was in that overtime game, in that game in February. That was the last game before the All-Star break. And AD hit a couple of big threes when they did go small, right? And one of them was off of a pin screen from Caruso when Torrey Craig strong side zoned on that. And so I suspect that rather than in the post, they'll have LeBron attacking from the wing, right? And looking to draw a second defender from there, and then cutting and pin screens and skip passes and all of that good stuff. But he represents part of the, like, when discussing like Dwight versus AD and like the lineups, whether you go big or not, like it's an all of the above thing. Like, to me, Dwight Howard are the body blows that make running back on a rim run in the fourth quarter exhausting, right? And that lower the hands, exactly, Anthony. And LeBron is part of that too, right? Like I'm curious about this, Adam, is with your guys' ball screen defense, as the years have gone on, at least from what I've noticed, is you guys got Jokic coming out farther and farther on pick and rolls. And then, you'll occasionally drop, but not as often as you do. What do you view like your guys' best attack in terms of our pick and roll attack, which we don't run a lot of, but I think we'll run more of than we did in previous series. Like, what does that look like from your guys' perspective? I see Jokic miss a lot of hedges, so that's something I can see LeBron looking to get downhill on.
Denver mixes up their coverage even now, so I don't really think it's been so much of a transformation. There was early on, and I'm talking 2016 and 17 and even part of 18 where Denver was dropping almost exclusively. Right. But over the last 2-3 years, I think it's been more of a situational. I think it's exhausting for Jokic to always be coming up to the level of the screen and playing like that. So rather than have him do that nonstop, they'll drop him sometimes almost as a concession. Like, hey, we're going to probably give up a pretty high percentage play here, but fourth quarter we'll get a little bit more aggressive. But the reason in that first round that you saw a lot of Jokic coming up, especially later in the screen, I think was primarily because number one, Donovan Mitchell was shooting 60% on pull-up three-pointers through 5 games. Everybody was talking about how Denver was getting cooked because they're awful defenses. Sometimes guys just make everything they throw up, and it's just like, okay, well, this guy's running hot. So they had that, and then also Donovan Mitchell was just such a fast, quick point guard, and that specifically, the quick point guard has given Denver problems over the years, especially Jokic and company in the pick and roll. LeBron's not that. He's a big guy, and he can see over the top, and that presents a whole different set of challenges. What I suspect Denver's going to do with him is probably drop a little bit more or play it a little bit below the level of the screen or something like that. Just try to cut off. Don't give him that straight line momentum drive to where Jokic is just standing there to get dunked on. Try not to give him a head of steam, but at the same time, if LeBron starts pulling up off the dribble for 3, I just think you have to give up something. I think they'll count that as a win.
LeBron rarely does that. I think they'll go to the AD pop at the top of the key as an option off of those.
Some of the most frustrating LeBron games that we've had this year has been when teams force him to take that. They drop under the screen and then they beg him to shoot that 3-pointer, and he doesn't. So, I think one of the things that we're going to have to see in the series is LeBron still taking that shot when it's given to him.
I think the number one thing, if I'm Denver, the number one thing I'm concerned about early in games, because you're going to have a fourth quarter strategy and you're going to have a first 3-quarter strategy. If I'm Denver, I'm very concerned about Jokic's fouls in those pick and rolls. And my pick and roll defense almost has less to do with how do you stop him and more to do with how do we not put Jokic in position to foul repeatedly in the pick and roll, because LeBron – this is what LeBron does. He's very good at, you're out of position. You're not as quick as me or can't jump as high. I'm going to put you in position to either let me dunk it on you or to foul me to stop me from getting there. So that would be my concern and is my concern. Do
you think they cross-match him and just put Jokic on like Kuzma or something like that and just keep him out of that play altogether?
No, this is the NBA, man. Guys, the teams know how to get people. They're going to put who they want in the pick and roll. Denver's going to do the exact same thing. Right. There's too many things you can do that if you might get a stop on a possession because they weren't ready for it. You might every now and then get it, but it's the NBA, man. They're going to find you.
Let's take another quick second here. When we come back, I want to get a little existential because this is kind of interesting. The whole bubble scenario thing has been really fascinating to me in the sense of like culture has really mattered in the bubble and chemistry.
I can't wait for this conversation.
Yeah, chemistry has really mattered. So I want to take a quick second. When we come back, we'll talk about that. Today's show is brought to you in part by Built Bar. Built Bar has been here with us throughout this entire trying time, and I want to continue to make sure we support them. We did an incredible job with the first iteration of this run with them. We sold all of the bars to the point where they had to restock, and we had to wait a little while to do that. Let's do that again with them. Those companies that really support us, we have to turn around and make sure we support them, and it's really easy to do it because of how great a product this is. So head on over to BuiltBar.com, check out all the incredible flavors that taste exactly like they're described. They have everything from caramel cream to cookies and cream to lemon almond cheesecake, all of that good stuff. So again, head over to BuiltBar.com, use promo code LOCKEDON to save $10 off not just your first order, but every order you ever put in on that website. One more time, that is BuiltBar.com, use promo code LOCKEDON.
Bengals, Browns, Burrow, Baker, Beckham. A battle of bees goes down to the wire. From our local experts to your ears, these are the biggest stories on the Locked On Podcast Network. First to the NBA, where the Miami Heat are now up 2-0 in their series against the Boston Celtics after a 106-101 win Thursday night. David Ramil is breaking down how the Heat came back from 17 points down on Locked On Heat today. Thursday night football fans were treated to a shootout between two young quarterbacks with star potential. Joe Burrow threw 3 touchdowns for the Bengals, but Baker Mayfield won the day 35-30 with the help of Odell Beckham. Get deep analysis of the weekend's action with the new Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Subscribe today wherever you get podcasts. And finally, the Stanley Cup is set in the National Hockey League. The Tampa Bay Lightning meet the Dallas Stars. Game 1 is Saturday. It's not too late to get a preview from Locked On NHL, Locked On Stars, and Locked On Lightning. Local experts on the biggest stories. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This week on Hollinger and Duncan.
Milwaukee, they never really gave themselves a plan B during the regular season for how they play. It's so hard to change your defense in the middle of the playoffs that you need to have different things in your toolkit. And we see this in the Toronto-Boston series where Brad Stevens and Nick Nurse are pulling all kinds of stuff out of their ass. But it's because it's all stuff they've done during the regular season. Like their team knows how to do it because they've done it before.
For a look at the NBA from the inside out, listen to the Hollinger and Duncan NBA show after this podcast.
So I want to focus on chemistry here because you look at the 4 teams that are remaining and they all seem to like legitimately enjoy being around each other. And then even further, you see with Miami.
See the reports of the Celtics locker room today?
Yeah, I'm all over that. Yeah, I was retweeting that.
I'm sure you are. Because I want to disagree with you in one way, Anthony. I don't think that that's what it is. First of all, when you win, everybody's happy,
it helps.
right? So the teams that are remaining are the teams that have won to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was talking really about the Clippers. Even in that first round, there's a little bit of disgruntled. There's a little bit of jawing back. But it wasn't until they started to really fray that Kawhi was yelling at guys, or Paul George was complaining at guys, and those stories came out. So I don't think it's that, but I'll let you kind of go on what else because I do think there's a commonality between the 4 teams.
Well, because I'm looking at the way that the best players on these 4 teams kind of handle themselves, and regarding the way that they interact with role players, the way that they interact with coaches and stuff like that. And you see Butler constantly. Not just coaching from the sideline, but also constantly giving these guys confidence. And in a bubble like this where you have nothing but your teammates to, offer that to you, offer that kind of value to you, I think it matters more. And then, you look at LeBron and AD and the way that they interact with each other, and then that kind of flows down. Jokic has really impressed me with how pumped he's gotten. Like he's picking up Jamal Murray and like that has not been the Jokic that I've necessarily seen all the time. And I think Boston, quite frankly, misses that. Jason Tatum is that team's best player, and they don't have that kind of loudest voice in the room that is also our best player. Like maybe it's Marcus Smart, maybe it's somebody else in the moment, but they don't have that.
So I don't want to bury. I don't want it to be like, oh, they're missing this one piece. Here's what I would say, and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong. I think the 4 teams share that they each have a culture. They're different cultures, but they have a defined culture and identity. And what I mean by that is the Miami Heat have always been the tough, hard-nosed organization. And Jimmy Butler's brought as like the perfect guy, and that team has gelled into this like they know who they are and what they are. I think the Celtics very much are the same. And look, I know we want to write them off because they've lost 2 games by 3 points, but let's be fair here. They're a very good team, and they're so I think that they too have an identity. They're incredibly smart, incredibly versatile, and balanced. Like they have a bunch of guys. Yes, Jason Tatum's the best, but Jaylen Brown. I mean, they've got a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things, and they can kind of adapt on the fly. Denver's been continuity. It's 5 years now of basically the same team. They've really built. I mean, you saw the pictures of Michael Malone picking up Jokic and stuff like. I mean, they feel like a college team that a group of college seniors that have been together for forever. And then the Lakers have a LeBron culture. I mean, they've imported. LeBron's been here so many times with so many different teams, so many iterations that the Clippers thought they could do this. They thought they could assemble some pieces and then build a new culture out of it. And I just don't think 9 times out of 10, I don't think you can. LeBron James did not have this effect on the Miami Heat in 2011. This was a thing he had to learn over time that, okay, chemistry is important. It takes years of this or that. So how can I expedite that process through having sort of a built-in and established culture? So I think all the teams have are very, very strong culturally. And why I bring this up specifically is inside the bubble, the one thing everybody that is inside the bubble that I talk to talks about is nobody understands what it's like in here. Like, we can explain it to you, but it's really depressing. Like, it's really, really taxing mentally.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe the Clippers would have wilted away under pressure under any circumstances, but I think they had no chance in this environment because those cracks become bigger and bigger under the pressures of whatever is happening in this bubble.
Yeah, and everybody's like, you're seeing the same dudes every day, and you're not seeing your people. It's I don't know if you've ever been to Vegas for longer than a handful of days. But it goes from like being, hey, this is great to, oh, this is actually terrible, right?
Terrible. Horrible. And I don't think it's even that. One of the things people keep telling me is just how regimented everything is. Like, even you're just used to kind of like, okay, I have practice, I have this and that. The rest of the day is mine, and I get to see these people and do this thing. And for them, it's like, well, I want to eat now, but I have to wait for 45 minutes. Or I'm not hungry now, but I have to eat now. And I'd really like to go play golf, but my time isn't till tonight. And it's nonstop where it's you can't do what it is you're wanting to do in that moment, and you have to do a bunch of things you don't want to do. And I think just over time that becomes very, very taxing. It's like being at camp, really, but for months.
I've really enjoyed the throwback to chemistry mattering, though. Like, not
Totally.
saying that I want these guys to go back into the bubble and all that. I don't want to put anybody through this anytime soon ever again. But I love the idea, like this postseason has really been a throwback postseason where we find out you can't reverse engineer efficiency. You do actually have to hit some shots from the mid-range, and you have to be able to show that ability to adjust in that way. You do have to kind of care about your teammates. You do kind of have to get along in especially in these really odd circumstances. And again, not to say that I ever want to see this kind of circumstance play out ever again. I hope as soon as it ends, I hope we're able to go, throw all of these plans in the trash can. But Pete, like this idea of a throwback postseason where all of these things, seem to legitimately matter, that I think we were kind of moving away from over the course of the last few years, especially by way of analytics and the way that teams are put together and all of these things. This stuff mattering again has been really fun.
Yeah, I think, there's no real super team, although I think by results, the Lakers are, I think, better than people expected them to be. And I think nationally people are starting to realize, like, oh, the Lakers are actually good. It's not just some.
Well, how many top 10 players are left in the Final Four? Because I think there's only three, four if you
throwing Butler in there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the Lakers have two of the three, maybe four top 10 players.
And at the end of like a lot of times in basketball, right? Like if you've got, the two best dudes or two of the three.
Like Caruso's really good. Danny Green knows exactly what he's doing. Like they've got guys that can play a role. So
that's the thing about this team is that I think is misunderstood, is that our role guys, they may average 5 points a game or 7 points a game. Everybody in the rotation can defend. Right. And there's a very cohesive, that culture that you're talking about. This team gets along very well. They communicate very well. And when they really lock in, I'm curious to see how game one goes. I wouldn't be surprised if we drop that.
I think we lose. I think the Lakers lose.
But the rotations, all of that, like everybody in the Lakers is a plus defender to a great defender like Anthony Davis, right? And even LeBron is a guy who's actually been very good on the defensive end this season.
He's a great defender.
Right, and he can access those great levels, right? And Dwight still has a lot of what, made him a great defender. Caruso's wonderful on the perimeter. Kuzma's gotten significantly better. So yeah, everybody, so it's basically a fairly simple formula of like, have two of the best players in the world and play great defense. It's not rocket science, right? And that's really what the Lakers are built on.
Yeah, totally. They're a fantastic team, man. And that's why I think obviously they're 5-1 favorites in Vegas right now. And I think there's obviously a reason for that. This series, as much as Nuggets fans, I think, are very excited about how the Nuggets have arrived at this location. There was always the understanding that, okay, if they should match up with a team like the Lakers, that was going to be it would be as big or bigger. People would call it as big or bigger of a collapse or failure should Denver beat the Lakers.
Oh,
people
100%.
were shocked.
Yeah.
People were
deservedly
shocked
so.
Everybody was so impressed with how the Nuggets played in that round, but still called it a Clippers collapse or loss or whatever, right? And it would be the exact same. Jokic could average a 30-point triple-double, and people would still say, well, how did the Lakers lose this series? And rightfully so. They are the better team at this moment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's so hard to do analysis on this. I don't know if you guys ran into this when you were trying to do your analysis or outline your analysis for this series. This is one of the series that I have the least understanding of. I knew going into the Blazers series that was going to be over quickly. I knew going into the Houston series, especially after Game 2, this is going to be over quickly. This one here, the logic points me in this direction where it says the Lakers should be heavy favorites in this series, but still the kind of stuff that we're seeing from Denver is so extraordinary, is so far out there in the realm of things that we have ever seen before. We have literally never seen an NBA team do what the Nuggets have done these last 2 rounds. And because of that, I have no idea how to do any of my analysis on this. I legitimately don't know.
So I think Denver actually led the NBA this season in 15-point comebacks. I know that's a weird. It seems extremely relevant because everybody just saw it on the big stage. But Denver is a little bit of this team. They're also the team though that Game 3 of that Utah series gets a 15-point lead, goes to 30, and then it's over by halftime. So, and I think that. Not that Denver ever plans to get down by 15 or anything like that, but should the Lakers get a 15-point lead in Game 1 at halftime, the conversation in that half is, guys, don't feel good about this. You saw what Denver did to Utah. You saw what they did to the Clippers. This is what they do. And I just think there's a little bit more – sometimes the secret's out of the bag, and it's like, okay, this is a team that's very comfortable in this spot. We have to put them away for real.
Yep. All right, we got to save some stuff for the 2 other shows that Adam and I are going to record together tonight. So this is it feels like a good place to end it. Pete, any kind of parting shots, any predictions or anything like that you want to before we actually head into these games?
I don't love predictions,
Me neither.
but Denver is a really good team that the Lakers need to have an appropriate sense of fear of. I think that's one thing with the Clippers is I thought the Clippers did not take them seriously enough, and then it became an avalanche that mowed them over. And if the Lakers do that, the Nuggets will do the same thing to the Lakers. That said, all season, Denver's been one of the teams I've circled as a good matchup for the Lakers because of the discrepancy in athleticism in the front court. And so if that's something the Lakers are able to leverage, which I think they will be, I think the Lakers are in good shape. Not going to make a prediction or anything like that, but I think that's going to be something that's difficult for Denver to overcome.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode and this week's episode.
You asked him if he wanted a final say. I don't.
Dude, we have 2 more shows to do.
Well, I do want one for the Lakers fans here because we always talk about this, Anthony.
He's like, in conclusion, suck it.
No, I'm going to say I'm 36 years old. I got 2 kids and I'm married. I'm a grown man. The Nuggets. This is the 3rd trip to the Western Conference Finals. 3rd trip. Wow. They've never been to the finals. All 3 times have been against the Los Angeles Lakers. Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant, now LeBron James's Lakers. So we're ready for it. We were built in this. We're made for this. Every decade I get a new trip to the conference finals to play a superior Lakers team.
Let's hope it ends the same way.
All right. That is going to do it for this week's episodes of the Locked On Lakers podcast. Please continue to stay safe out there. Have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and we will talk to you on Monday when the Lakers have, I believe, a 2-0 lead. They would have a 2-0 lead next time.
Stop it.
Better be 2-0. You don't want to get to 3-1. I'm telling you.
Actually, I think I'd rather be down 0-2 to Denver than to get to 3-1 against them. Have a great weekend, everybody.
All right, guys.
Make sure you guys, by the way, tune in to the other 2 shows that Adam and I are going to do. There is still a ton to dig up through this fascinating matchup.
Rejecting the Screen has been retweeted by Kobe, Dame Lillard, and Vince Carter, so it's fair to say you should give it a shot. I'm Noah Kozlov.
And I'm Adam Stanko. Rejecting the Screen hits your feed every Tuesday and Thursday. On Tuesday, we talk hoops and a little bit of life.
On Thursday, we go ISO with a guest. Stories from anyone and everyone who has touched the NBA with tales we promise you've never heard before.
Find Rejecting the Screen right now wherever you get podcasts, and hit that subscribe button.